So I'm going to go ahead and start, everyone. And if you would just please remember to stay on mute. And I will be checking the chat box and bring questions forward when needed. And I am excited one more time to have all you volunteers and staff and DCYF social workers to our 4th annual ICWA Institute, but our first Zoom. And I'm really excited today, and I'm going to go ahead and just open up in a good way and just know that our creator is with us today, knowing that our 2 speakers and presenters today bring us great knowledge. So as we just continue to walk on Mother Earth, may we be guided to the truth and in helping our children and our families in Indian country. So thank you. So it's my honor to introduce Heidi Walker, who is a regional statewide manager for NAIR. She has been with us from the beginning of this ICWA Institute journey. And I'm also honored today to have Roxanne Finley, who comes to you and to me with great knowledge of LICWAC. These are 2 important aspects as your journey in helping Indian children and Indian families. So without further ado, I'm just going to let them have the floor and share with all of you the great knowledge that they bring forth. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you for that nice introduction, Laura. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for this opportunity to present. Today we'll be hearing about NAIR and the NAIR process, and that's the Native American Inquiry Request process. And like Laura said, I'm Heidi Walker. I'm the program manager for NAIR and for Relative Search for the entire state of Washington. Both are centralized programs. So I had the liberty of sneaking in yesterday and listening to some of your session, and I did hear some references to Relative Search, and I want to put it out there that I'm always a resource for that too, for CASA and child advocates and guardian items. Everyone can reach out, and I would be happy to assist with any questions about that as well. So anyhow, welcome, like I said, to the Native American Inquiry Request training, and I put on here our 4th annual ICWA Institution. So happy to be here, and yes, I've been part of this since the first one and had looked forward to traveling to Blaine. So we will make do with what we can for Zoom though. Okay. So in identifying Indian children, why do we ask? I know you guys have talked about this with David Simmons the last 2 days. We're basing our ask on the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, also our Washington State ICWA Welfare Act, RCW 1338, and then we get our direction from the DCYF ICW manual, chapter 3 specifically. So in Washington State, we have broken down our state into 6 regions, and we have 29 tribes within those regions. Just gonna point out, so region 1, we have Colville, Kalispell, and Spokane. Yakima is the only tribe in region 2, Yakima Nation. Region 3 has 8, Nooksack, Lummi, Samish, Upper Skagit, Tulalip, Saxuatl, Swinomish, and Stillaguamish. Then we move on to region 4, and that's the region Roxanne Finney represents. She's the consultant for that region, that she works in, is the liaison for Muckleshoot and Snoqualmie. Down to region 5, which is the Pierce County, Bremerton area, we have Port Gamble, Puyallup, and the Suquamish tribe. Lastly, region 6 has the majority of the tribes. There's 12 tribes in region 6. Chehalis, Cowlitz, Ho Indian tribe, Makah, Nisqually, Jamestown Sklallam, Lower Elwha, Quinault, Quileute, Shoalwater, and Skokomish. All right. Oh, and excuse me, Squaxin Island. How could I forget Squaxin? Okay, so moving to this next slide, this is a actual copy paste from the manual, the policy manual for ICW, and this can be found on the DCYF internet under tribal relations. And for the purposes of this training, we will be, oh no, my slides aren't working. Oh, there it goes. We will be talking about the Indian Identity Request Form, the completion of a family ancestry chart, and then how an actual referral over to NAIR is made. Okay, so straight from our RCW and our manual, determining the child's Indian status must be made as soon as possible. This is to preserve the best interests of the Indian child and to protect the interests of the child's tribe. And our caseworkers are tasked with identifying and verifying whether a child meets this definition early on in the case to preserve the child's culture. This is a copy of the actual Indian identity request that our caseworkers are required to complete at the initial contact with the parents. I'll point out here that this has to be completed for each intake. And then regardless of the answers to this, our workers have to upload this. And this is a change that was made, and this is huge, just so we are not losing these documents. We need these documents, especially we're going towards term. All of this needs to be in the file and preserved. And if the family, if one or more of the parents does indicate that they have tribal affiliation, then the worker is required to complete an ancestry chart. So, and many times, a family might say, yes, I have ancestry, but I'm not aware of the name of the tribe, or for whatever reason, they're not clear. So there is a box on here that they can say identity of tribe is unknown. And in those cases, we, NAIR will send an inquiry letter over to the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs in Portland. I think the huge takeaway on this sheet that I always tell workers, and CASAs can also remind workers of this, moms cannot sign for dad, dads cannot sign for mom. We need to ask each side of the family. We can't just go off of mom's word that she thinks dad doesn't have any Native ancestry. We need to be checking with each side of the family and just confirm that. So here's I share this PowerPoint with my good friend Francisca called at the Alliance. And so this is a map. I'm not even sure where he found it, but Canada is spelled with a K. That's awesome. Anyhow, so we bring this up because oftentimes when we see those forms filled out, a family will say Blackfoot, okay? And I ask our workers to make sure that the family is clear that Blackfoot is a Canadian First Nation, and Blackfeet tribe is actually a federally recognized tribe in Montana. So we need to make sure the family is clear on what they're reporting, because ICWA only applies to federally recognized tribes, meaning we would not be sending an inquiry to Blackfoot Canadian First Nation. So here's just, oops. You can see the reservation is right near the border, and many times, family members moved and they have ties on both sides of that border. But, and if that's the case, and if the family really doesn't know, they can list on that ancestry chart Blackfoot or Blackfeet/Blackfoot, and my staff will understand that, and we will go ahead and send to Blackfeet just to be on the safe side.
Heidi, it's Ryan. Really quickly, could you talk a little bit more about the interplay between ICWA and non-federally recognized tribes and kind of what the department's stance on that is, or what you do? Thanks.
Yes, so ICWA only applies to federally recognized tribes. So if it's a non-federally recognized tribe, or maybe a Canadian First Nation. We don't legally have the right to share information under ICWA with those tribes or those bands. ICWA only gives the department that liberty to share information without a consent to the federally recognized tribes. That doesn't mean per se that if a family is reporting Jawamish heritage, that the social workers shouldn't still be reaching out to them for cultural connections, more like it would be like a relative collateral call. Not really sharing information about the case, but maybe more gathering information and seeing what resources or supports would be available for the family. If the family does want to have the like Duwamish or Stelicum or whichever non-federally recognized tribe present at their meetings, they can sign a consent and those tribes can be included, but we cannot reach out to them directly with case information.
Would they still, yeah, just one more question. Would they still be transferred to your ICWA units and staffed that way, or would they be through a normal CFWS worker?
So each region kind of does their own thing, meaning some have specialized ICWA units, some offices, everyone carries each kind of case, you know, throughout the life of the case. Roxanne, do you know how it is? Roxanne works out of the Office of Indian Child Welfare in Seattle. That's a specialized ICWA office.
They do take cases of descendants and Canadian First Nations.
Okay.
So they will handle cases. It's just that, and I want to clarify this, you know, we're not looking at who's Indian and who isn't Indian. If you're Indian, whether you're Canadian First Nation, a descendant, you're Indian. That's all I can say. But when it comes to ICWA, this law only applies to those individuals who are members or eligible for membership in a US federally recognized tribe. And it has to do not with the fact that you're racially and ethnic Indian, it has to do with your political status, your connection to that government. That's the point I think is important to make. It's not about the identity of Indian. It means the definition is about your connection and your membership of that government, that tribal government.
Thank you, Roxanne, because I think that's really important that everybody understands that they may not be from a federally recognized or they cannot find a tribe. They're still Indian children that need to be treated as such.
And as Heidi mentioned, it is covered in our policies that if they are Indian, we do, and I will talk about this in my presentation as well. I'm going to touch on that too, but we have to do cultural case planning for everybody.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Let me see, where are we? Okay, so helpful hints along the way that we share with our staff that even if you've already spoken to the parents and asked about Native affiliation or ancestry, ask again. Ask at every case transfer, ask maybe at shared planning meetings or the FTDMs when additional family members are there, might be able to add more information. This is key for my group. So my NAIR staff, there's only 4 of them, NAIR specialists for the whole state, and they are tasked with sending out these inquiries to every federally recognized tribe. So I say all that to say, we ask that our social workers work with the family to closely narrow down which tribe they may be affiliated with. So that being said, there's 22 Chippewa tribes, 16 federally recognized Sioux tribes and bands, over 90 Native Aleut villages in Alaska. So if a family just says, I'm from a Sioux tribe, that means if they're not able to narrow that down, my staff are going to be sending out inquiries to all 16 Sioux tribes or all 22 Chippewa tribes. And this is for each child, not as per family. So this is a lot of correspondence back and forth. So we do kind of teach our staff to ask and dig a little deeper if they're just mentioning a certain name of a tribe. Again, if mother's not available or father's not available, ask someone from the family or anybody who can reasonably expected to have this information. Okay, so again, this is just a snapshot from our policy. As soon as you, well, not as soon as, within 10 days, I would like to change this to immediately so we can get a jump on working on this. But within 10 days of the parents filling out that Indian identity request form, our staff have to send it over to the NAIR unit in 10 business days. So they need to do this on all new cases, any case with prior episodes, but the family has new information they have learned. They need to let us know over at NAIR and we will send out updated information to the tribes. And then if a case closes, maybe a second dependency is filed or new investigations come up and it's been 18 months, we have to reevaluate our past correspondence with the tribes and possibly send out new inquiry letters. Okay, so again, a lot of this is for the social workers' information, but I'm hoping that you folks will have access to some of this information in Discovery. So I train them in their RCT, that's the regional training, core training, when I help out with Francis sometimes. And our first step is to look at the child's ICWA tab in FamLink. If there's nothing on this page, that means there has never been a referral to NAIR made. There's no activity on this page. That means they are responsible to do that. And if there's no X in this family ancestry chart box, that means it's never been opened and no one's ever launched it or completed it. So when we could probably actually skip this slide. Sorry, some of these are also geared towards our staff, and this is like an internal reminder for them on our person management page. If there's no parents here, then nothing will populate onto that ancestry chart. So it's just a quick reminder, you have to plug in the parents on these screens in FamLink, and you have to make sure it's the correct parent you're plugging in because their birthday and their place of birth also is populated. And so here's our ancestry chart. You guys are probably pretty familiar with. Hopefully you're seeing copies of these. This directions how to properly complete it, just last name first, first name, middle name. If the parent is adopted, we need to know that so we know, which families, connections we're searching for. If there's no tribe identified, they need to be putting none indicated, not just leave it blank, because then we're guessing, did they mean to put something? And we have to go back and contact them, and it's just not getting processed timely. If we don't know the name, unknown tribe is fine. And then the social worker puts their name and the date they worked on it here. And then my NAIR staff will add a hyphen in their own name and the date they worked on it. And we then send it with the inquiries to the tribes. So my staff have access to numerous search engines that we are looking for family connections. We're filling this ancestry chart out to the third, fourth generation sometimes, depending on what is available to us. We have access to the Indian DAS rolls, the census, of course, our ACES and barcode and different Department of Health through Washington. We have all of those in our child support databases. So we're plugging all of that information, we're verifying information. A lot of times we're able to find actual roll numbers and we will plug those in. They're not required, but it is helpful because we're sending this information over to the tribes to help them make the most comprehensive determination possible. this is all about saving it. We have this technical issue within FamLink. So I tell them, do not push this, do not push this, only click here and then save here and then save again. It's a whole process, and I really feel bad for the social workers. So we try to be step by step in helping them to get it saved and not lose their work. So here's some more helpful hints. Kind of, we went over these within the ancestry chart. If they don't have the information thoroughly, completely, just put as much as they can. So if you happen to be at a home visit and the social worker is trying to collect this information, and you're there, feel free to kind of prompt the family, maybe ask about maiden or alias names, even nicknames that people might have went by within the family. This last point is the most crucial for families that didn't originate in Washington. Those are the ones that our systems, we don't have as much information within our systems to track down. So it's up to the families to really help us get this information on their chart so we can hand it over to the tribes. So we don't have any special forms for our workers to do this, to make a referral. It's a quick email. Just send it over to us. We send an email back saying, we've got your email and you're on our log. And if there's any questions or concerns, of course, we'll just reach out directly. Again, more helpful hints. If the family provides a membership or enrollment number, we can include those. They're not required. And social workers aren't really instructed to ask families for this information. If they share it, that's fine. It's again, it's not required. Oops. And the big takeaway on this is, well, there's quite a few things on this page, but referrals sometimes get missed when families have another baby and they're already involved with our system. And so even if referrals have been sent over for the older siblings and we've processed those cases and reached out to tribes on those children's behalf, our NAIR staff will have no idea if there's a new baby in the family. And so we have to process each of these individually for each child, right? So we can't go off of a response from Quileute saying that the oldest brother is eligible for membership. We can't just assume that the baby will be as well. We have to have responses for each child. And also that being said, the children could have different parents, a different dad or whatnot. So this is always for each child. And I remind our social workers, you got to tell us about this new baby, because if you're going to court, then you don't have any of this work done. And you're going to need to present this for the court. And it's not going to go well. It's going to hold everything up if this stuff hasn't been processed. Another thing I just want to point out on here, even if a family tells our workers or yourselves as CASAs, I'm a member of the Puyallup tribe, we still are going to be doing our thorough search, because most tribal families are also going to be affiliated with more than one tribe. And so we, under ICWA, we are responsible for informing all tribes that the family is affiliated with. So a family could be a member with Puyallup, but they're also eligible for a member with Muckleshoot. Under ICWA, we still need to tell Muckleshoot about, we still need to give them an inquiry, so they have that option of being a party to this case and having this case information. Roxanne, do you have anything to add on that? I feel like I'm kind of getting tongue-tied and maybe not explaining that part right.
I think you're covering it. We contact all tribes that are named, and we keep them apprised. And one thing tribes have, and I didn't mention this, or you didn't mention it either, that tribes have access to our FamLink.
Yes.
So they can read the cases. they can see most of the information. They're not going to be able to see anything like reports yeah, they'll only see what's in there, but they're not going to see hard copy reports. But they can see a lot of the documentation, the court orders, and case notes.
Mm-hmm. So the tribes, meaning our 29 federally recognized tribes here in Washington, yes, they can. And I've actually had tribal staff reach out to me and say, we didn't receive an inquiry for this kiddo, and this is one of our kids, and we're looking at the ICW tab, and there's no record of their affiliation with us. And so that prompts us also to reach out to the social worker and make sure they're aware, and then we get our inquiries processed. Thank you, Roxanne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, this is more for staff. There should be an actual case note. And again, I'm not sure what you folks all get with Discovery, but if you're wondering if a referral has been made, there should be a case note about it. And it should just really be short and sweet, sent referral to NAIR. This is just explaining they should just choose whichever category they're in, FRS, CPS, whichever. It's all really self-explanatory. Just choose the activity, send referral to NAIR. And I apologize if this is overly technical for you folks that don't have access to FamLink and aren't doing this work. So a few years ago, we had some questions during a training about, well, what are the impacts if we don't send a referral to NAIR, right? So we just listed out a ton of things that could possibly impact the case. I'm sure there's others, but I think these are all really important for social workers and you folks to consider. So if no one sends NAIR a referral, there's the chance that we're missing information or there's incorrect information under the ICWA tab. And when that's finally noticed, it could really cause a problem through the whole dependency. Unfortunately, there's been cases that the department has had to overturn the dependency or the termination, because things were not documented correctly. NAIR wasn't involved in sending out inquiry letters, and the tribes were basically not provided that early information. And so they later became involved in the case, and these terminations had to be overturned and start that whole dependency process over. So another impact, it might directly affect applying ICWA timely, placement preference, active efforts, concurrent jurisdiction, all of this could be impacted. And again, it could just really, it could result in continuance or overturning, vacating an adoption even, if we haven't done the proper steps. Just have to say, this is a little picture of an ornament that Laura Lee blessed me with last year when I presented for the ICWA Institute. So again, more impacts. Really, this could lead to unexpected changes of placements for that child, missed cultural and familial connections for that child and family, culturally appropriate case planning. Maybe no one's considering that, or applying, referring the family to culturally appropriate services and providers. Possible lost resources and support for those kiddos, like education, healthcare, possible per cap, different things that the family could be eligible for. Then when we send out the inquiries, sometimes tribes will write a variety of things back on it, and it's just really good information for the social worker to have for the family. And then ultimately, we never want to jeopardize our relationships with our federally recognized sovereign nations. These are government to government relationships. We pride ourselves in the great work that we are doing with our tribes. And it's our obligation to let them know when one of their families are involved in our system. And so a lot of times, not a lot, but there are times when our NAIR inquiries are the first maybe red flag that they're even receiving, that a member of theirs is involved in the system. So we really want to maintain those relationships and respect those relationships. So this is an actual copy of the inquiry. I put only my staff should be sending this out. This is because these inquiries are sequential. So this is a copy of the first one. We put the date, whatnot. If the tribe hasn't responded within 45 days, 6 weeks, 45 days, we send a second one. And our policy requires my staff to send out 2 of these inquiries to out-of-state federally recognized tribes, and 3 to our Washington state. The 29 tribes are our partners here in Washington state. We usually get a response pretty quickly and don't have to send out a second or third inquiry to our state partners or tribal state partners. But a lot of times, we're still waiting for out-of-state tribes. And we understand that, especially with the pandemic, tribes have laid off staff or are working from home. They're not readily able to get these answers. Maybe they may have to connect with enrollment or various other people within the tribes to get this information for us. So the key is to this work, be patient, be respectful, and know that we're working on it. We get a lot of emails from attorneys and social workers just asking us, maybe, what's the status with this? Have you heard from the tribe? As soon as we hear from the tribes, we let the social workers know, and we suggest that they immediately let you folks and the AAGs know of any answers from the tribes that may change the trajectory of the case. So this is just the next steps after we do get that ancestry chart and that referral. We have 30 days to get it processed and sent out. Again, it's for each child individually. As soon as we hear something, or even before then, we let the social worker know right away if during our search possible other tribes have been located that the family is affiliated with. We give them a copy of the ancestry chart, tell them to share it with the family, review. If they have any questions or concerns, let us know. And we let them know we're now sending out these letters. Again, it's 2 letters for out-of-state tribes, 3 for in-state, if needed. And then we send them the response, and we update it in the ICW tab. We are now uploading all responses, whether it be a positive response from the tribe, such as they're a member or eligible for membership, or even a negative negative response from the tribe saying that this child is determined non-ICWA and the tribe won't be involved in any way. We're now uploading all of that information right into FamLink Upload. I came onto this program in July 2019 as the program manager and quickly made that change. Prior to that, we were only uploading positive responses, and we were sending hard copies of negative responses to the offices in the mail, and they were responsible for filing this information. And I'm not really sure about the success of that. Several responses could not be located. So at crunch time, when folks are going to term and need this information, we weren't keeping copies of those ourselves. So we were having to refer social workers to reach back out to the tribes to get that information if they had not successfully stored it away. Anyhow, so who determines eligibility? Only a tribe can determine this. Their determination is final. It's not DCYF's ability to change this determination. It's not my NAIR staff, it's job, court, LICWAC. No one can make this determination of the child's status, membership status with the tribe, except for the tribe. So if you ever do see the family, or excuse me, the ICWA tab within FamLink, this is what it's going to look like. I've just popped in a few of the different responses the tribes can give, like to point out. So first of all, like Sherwood Valley, if they respond non-ICWA, this means they don't recognize the child as a member eligible for membership in their tribe. Their involvement will be none. Suquamish, if they're saying this child's eligible for membership, they want to be an ICWA consultant, then that's what we're plugging in here. They can be a member, they can be a party to the case. This is a good example of unable to determine. So that means the tribe never got back to us. There's no reply. That status is still pending. And as you'll hear Roxanne speak, any tribal status pending means these cases need to go over to LICWAC and be staffed until we do get the response from the tribe. For some tribes, such as Cherokee and a few others, even when we do send the most comprehensive ancestry chart that we are able to complete, they could send something back saying they need more information and they still can't make a determination. So until we find more information, those kiddos kind of just stay in the unable to determine mode. And staff will have to work with the AAGs to talk about how this is presented to the court. And then the last one, the Tulalip tribes, there's nothing there. That means inquiry letters have been launched by my staff. We just haven't received anything back, and it is in the works.
So Heidi, this is Roxanne. I wanted to make a comment on this.
Okay.
So if Nisqually is involved in the case, if they've intervened and they're a party, we would not staff it at LICWAC because they're involved.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
I was just giving examples of
okay.
what it
Yeah,
may look like.
because-
Sure, if the tribe is involved, then we should not be staffing it at LICWAC. LICWAC no longer has, I don't want to misspeak, but almost they have no legal authority. The department has no legal authority to be sharing that information with the LICWAC committee anymore if the tribe has in fact said that this is a member. They recognize the child as a member. And again, Roxanne can speak more to that. So sorry if I caused confusion on that. All right, so these are just quick definitions. So it's clear to anybody who's not familiar with ICWA and what we're having the tribes make the decision on under ICWA. And then also the definitions for tribal involvement, the different level of involvement they would like to have. And, you know, this is always dependent on the resources and maybe, well, I guess it does come down to the resources that the tribe has. You know, this, maybe they're saying this is a member of their tribe, but they don't have a funded social service staff, or they don't have an ICWA court, or excuse me, a dependency court through their tribe. So that's all going to factor into why they've responded the way they have. They can even give permission for LICWAC to continue to be involved if they want supports from LICWAC. So, and when I'm speaking really about tribes outside of Washington State that really don't have those resources to be closely involved with families out of their state. Okay, so after my folks do their 2 or 3 letter requirements, we close out our case. We let the social worker know the outcome, that hey, there are possible tribes, or not possible, but we identify the tribes that have not responded, and it's the worker's job then to follow up and make monthly efforts to get those unable to determine pending inquiries resolved. So there's policy around this. If they need help, they can also reach out to the Portland BIA. And then if this is a case going to termination, and the tribe has not responded after 12 months of those social workers' attempts, then the social workers to staff their efforts with ICW headquarters and their AAG and talk about how this is going to be presented to the court and to go from there. So it's huge for documentation purposes. Again, this is required for monthly attempts after NAIR is no longer involved. So here's kind of an example that we give to those social workers. There should be no question on which tribes haven't responded yet. This is an email that is also copy and pasted into a case note for the social worker, just letting them know that, hey, my folks are done with our assignment to this case, but Cherokee and Cowlitz still haven't responded. The social worker is then responsible to keep making those attempts to get an answer from Cherokee and Cowlitz on the child's ICWA determination. And this is a link from within FamLink. It's just to the Federal Register. And this is how we tell our staff this is how we direct our staff to find out who is the designated ICWA agent for the tribe. So just a quick tutorial here. We're punching in the tribe, and then it's going to be highlighted throughout the register, each Cherokee tribe. So it gives the contact information, and there's no question about their address, phone number, email, any of that. And to make things even easier for our staff after DCYF NAIR folks have bowed out, Roxanne and I came up with this brief letter. They can copy and paste and use it monthly, keep updating it. This is an email or put it in a mail form or fax. They can send this right to the tribe saying, hey, previous inquiries have been sent on these dates. I'm trying to follow up to determine the child's Indian status. So I wanted to add in here just our NAIR data report that we've been collecting since 2017, just so you folks might get a understanding of the capacity of the work that is being processed here. So 2020, it's been a different kind of year for all of us. We've all switched to teleworking, all of my staff, but we're still looking at really high numbers that we were able to process with just taking turns of clerical folks going into the office and printing and mailing. But we processed 2,822 inquiries. So the difference between the referrals received and the inquiries completed, I just want to point that out. When we get these referrals sent over to us, unfortunately, sometimes these referrals are sent at the time of case closure. So that's why I really emphasize in my training to our staff that they need to get this information sent over to us within 10 days of learning that the family has affiliation with the tribe. If they wait until the time they're ready to close out their investigation and then send it over to us, we can't process these referrals. If the case is closed, my NAIR folks have no authority to send out inquiries on a family's behalf to the tribes. They're no longer open and receiving, services from the department, so we can't be reaching out without an open case. So if they're sending it over and the case is closed or pending closure, there's nothing we can do about it. We do send them back an email and a case note saying, you sent this at case closure, we can't process it. As soon as, in the future, as soon as this family resurfaces or an investigation is reopened, send us this information so we can get on it, get those processed. And then just list the numbers of the first letters we send out, and second and thirds. And then our outcomes as far as when tribes respond. For 2020, 168 children were identified as tribal members. Another 101 were identified as eligible for membership, and 27 were identified as descendants. Descendancy doesn't fall under ICWA, but we do track that because many tribes may still offer supports or resources for their descendants, and we like to pass that information on to the social workers so they can consider that in case planning, and so that information doesn't get lost. And those are all uploaded as well within FamLink, so that the social workers have all of this information. So that is my presentation. Should we open time for questions before we move on to LICWAC, or do we need to take a break? I know that was a lot of information to process.
You know, Heidi, I think I'm going to leave that up to you, but I did have a question that we can go over if you'd like. And it's
Sure.
just one, and it says,
Okay.
how does the CASA stay up to date with the ancestry NAIR search? Discovery distribution lags, and often, you know, it's a long process getting discovery. What can a CASA expect from a social worker?
So they can ask the social worker to just look at that ICW tab and see what's on there. Hopefully they get a quick response. If for any reason you're not getting a response, you can reach out to me. I'm not opposed to that. I'm willing to help and give you a quick answer, even if I can even do a screenshot of that tab and send it to you so you know exactly what's on there.
That's great, Heidi, because I find a lot of times that there's a lot of questions about why is it taking so long, you know, when it's unclear if it's an ICWA case or not. And I think, you know, just having you there available to be able to answer those questions. I mean, because I can talk about my experience, but I think coming from you might even be more clear to them.
Sure. And
Okay.
if everybody just really understands and remembers that, you know, some of these tribes it's one person responding to all of these inquiries. I know you spoke on it yesterday about Blackfeet getting, you know, everyone in America is Blackfeet apparently, and they're getting all the inquiries and having to respond. And, you know, it's one person doing all this work, and it's a huge time absorber for that person. So
Yes.
we understand that, and we try to respect that and emphasize
Okay.
patience.
Heidi, I'm just going to try to save your email inbox from impatient folks wanting to know about NAIR process. Please check, volunteers, please check with your program staff first before you send an email to Heidi. Just so at least you're only getting 30 a day as opposed to 130.
It's okay.
Heidi.
I rarely get any from CASAs. We get a lot from AAGs, and I was actually surprised when we started getting them from AAGs. I figured the social workers were sharing this information, but you know, we're happy to help. We can fill in those gaps.
Thanks, Heidi, and thanks, Ryan. And I think that's the only question that we had in there, Heidi. So thank you so much. And let's turn it over to Roxanne, who has some really great experience and knowledge when it comes to LICWAC. Thanks, Roxanne. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Hey, Heidi, can you shut on your PowerPoint?
Sorry, did that do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm hoping this is going to work. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to try to put it on slideshow, and I'm hoping it'll work. Otherwise, we'll just go back to this. But because last time I did it, or I did one, and they said they couldn't see it. So we'll see how it goes. But before I start, let me introduce myself. My name is Roxanne Finney, and I am the ICW program consultant for Region 4. I have been with the department for about over 15 years. And prior to that, I worked for a community-based program called United Indians of All Tribes. I was there about almost 17 years. I've worked for the Seattle Indians. I've worked for the Ottawa Tribe. I've worked for the Snoqualmie Tribe. And so my work history for Indian child welfare goes back at least 38 plus years. So I'm here today to talk to you about LICWAC. I'm a member of the Assiniboine Tribe. I am also a descendant of the Chippewa Tribe. Both those tribes are located in Montana. So here today, I'm going to talk to you about the local Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee, and I'm hoping that this slideshow will work. The Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee is it's an acronym for, LICWAC, for Local Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee. It's a body of volunteers representing local tribes, Indian organizations, or members at large that were formed to provide advice on case planning services for Indian children when the tribe is not involved or is unavailable. And as Heidi mentioned in the presentation, sometimes tribes really are limited in their resources and do staff cases rather than become involved, and that we do.
Hey, Heidi.
Thank you, Ryan.
This is Ryan. I think we're having an issue with bandwidth. So what I'd like to do is have you stop sharing, and then I'll run the slideshow from here. And I think that's, your voice is breaking up.
Okay.
Because of
LICWAC means Local Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee. It's a body of volunteers that represent local tribes, Indian organizations, or members at large, and they're formed to provide advice on case planning services for Indian children when a tribe is not involved or is unavailable. They ensure that our ICWA policies and laws governing child welfare are being followed. Yeah. So LICWAC started in the early 70s. It was in response to some child welfare reform because tribes back in the 70s already had data about their children. And the tribes of Washington met with the department, and at that time, along with different programmators or urban leaders in organizations, wanted to address the issue of separation of Indian children from their families and communities. The Tribes and Off Reservation Group did ask for policy reform, and LICWAC now is started in King County actually as a pilot, and then it went statewide. They were originally called Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committee, and then because they went statewide, they became instituted. So we have about 18 statewide today. Sounds like I'm getting lots of
yeah, so the next thing, let's try this. Go ahead and turn off your video.
Okay.
Sorry, guys, but we'd rather hear her than see her. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I did
now.
put it.
So as I mentioned earlier, the local Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committees began in the early 70s, and it was they were instituted to address the issues of Indian children separated from their families and communities. So the Tribes of Washington and Off Reservation groups asked for some policy reform, and they were meeting with the department heads, and they discussed having these committees. And it originally piloted in King County, and then and it was called the Indian Child Welfare Committee, but they wanted to institute it as a statewide group, so they called it the Local Indian Child Welfare Advisory Committees. And these were ad hoc committees that were specifically instituted for this purpose. Next slide. So I'd like to give this historical timeline to show you what was going on in Washington before the Indian Child Welfare Act happened. So we have the formation of LICWACs. In 1972, the Office of Indian Affairs was established and is now known as Office of Indian Policy. That office we have now taken over since DCYF formed its own agency. So we had to have a policy group, and that's what the Office of Tribal Relations is, that is now doing the same work that the Office of Indian Policy is doing. In 1976, the LICWAC becomes codified in our regulations. In 1977, Office of Indian Policy, or the Indian Policy Advisory Committee is established. It's called IPAC. And then, okay, so back to that fourth bullet, we had the Indian Policy Advisory Committee. That changed to the, when DCYF became its separate agency, it became the Tribal Advisory Policy Committee, and is known as TPAC. And then in 1978 is when we have the Child Welfare enacted. And then in 87, we have the State Tribe Agreement. In 1987, the DSHS Administrative Policy 701 is implemented. And now it's called the 1003 because of, again, DCYF. Then you have the 1989 Centennial Accord is signed, and then 1990 our ICWA manual is developed and revised in 2000 and 2016. And then, of course, in 2011, the Indian Child Welfare Act of Washington was established. Next slide, thank you. So you know about Indian child welfare when it was established. It was a federal law, came out in 1978, and the intent of Congress was to protect the best interests of Indian children and provide stability and security to Indian tribes and families. And as part of that intent, their intention, the intention of Congress, that they found there is no resource that is more vital to the continued existence and the integrity of Indian tribes than their children. And then all states are required to adhere to ICWA. Tribes can develop their own codes. So this applies to, yes. And so what it did, the law did, was establish standards for the states, meaning that tribes were entitled to legal notice of child custody proceedings, that tribes had a right to intervene and be a party to the case, and they could intervene at any point in the case. They could transfer jurisdiction to their tribal court. It requires that states provide remedial and rehabilitative services for Indian families. Before placement occurs, this is your active efforts. We have to follow placement preference. Those are for child welfare, foster care placement and pre-adopt, and then adoptive placements. And then you have to meet a higher standard for dependency and termination. So the burden of proof for dependency is clear and convincing, and for termination, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And lastly, it requires a qualified expert witness that will give testimony in court when you're trying to establish a dependency or a termination, that continued custody of the child by the parents could be the child would be at serious harm and risk. So that's what that required the qualified expert witness means. Okay, next. The intent of the state law was to protect the essential tribal relations and best interests of Indian children. And when placement is necessary for child safety, Washington State is committed to a placement that reflects the unique values of the child's culture. And that is well, that's okay. That 1338 is the Indian Child Welfare Act, RCW. Okay, thanks. So the definition of Indian child means any unmarried person who is under the age of 18 and is either a member of an Indian tribe or eligible for membership in an Indian tribe and is a biological child of a member. That's our state federal definition. And then Indian child means unmarried and unemancipated Indian person who is 18 years of age. is either a member or eligible for membership in a Indian tribe and is the biological child of a member. So it's basically the same thing, except for unemancipated. Next slide. So the federal law and even our state law prescribes placement preferences and for foster care, and this is the federal requirement that for foster care and pre-adopt that the child should be placed with the Indian child's extended family, a foster home licensed, approved, or specified by the Indian tribe, the child's tribe, or an Indian foster home licensed or approved by an authorized non-Indian licensing authority, or an institution for children approved by an Indian tribe or operated by an Indian organization, which has a program suitable to meet the Indian child's needs. That's the federal placement preference. Next slide. And then this is for our Washington State, our requirements by our Washington State law that a child foster care agency approved by an Indian tribe or operated by an Indian organization, which has a program suitable to meet the Indian child's needs, a non-Indian foster care agency approved by the child's tribe, or a non-Indian family that is committed to promoting and allowing appropriate extended family visitation, establishing and maintaining and strengthening the child's relationship with his or her tribe or tribes, and participating in cultural and ceremonial events of the child's tribe. Next, please. So the adopted placement preference, and this is the for the federal laws, a member of the child's extended family, other members of the Indian child's tribe, or in any adopted placement of an Indian child under state law, a preference shall be given in the absence of good cause to the contrary to a placement with other Indian families. Next slide. So cultural case planning, as mentioned in Heidi's presentation, ICWA does not apply to Indians who are descendants of members of federally recognized tribes or Canadian First Nation, or members of Métis community or non-status community from Canada, or members of non-federally recognized tribes. However, it's the policy of the department that caseworkers provide cultural case planning for every child in the foster care system. And usually for non-ICWA children, which means the law doesn't apply to these Indian children, cultural case planning should be specific to the child's tribe and family when possible. The functions of LICWAC, they review cases of Indian children receiving services from DCYF. They can act as a multidisciplinary team in the development of cultural relevant case plans. And they can act as an administrative review team. And they also, we don't do this much now. In fact, I'm not even sure we do, but it can act as a child protective team staffing. And they may also act as a permanency planning staffing. That's an option. The role of LICWAC, ensure the inquiry process is thorough and complete, ensure placement preferences have been followed, and if not, then they ask why. Ensure tribal, relative, and cultural connections are maintained, and assist with identifying cultural resources and activities. You know, in my region, I am the facilitator for LICWAC, and I do count on my members to help in resource identification, and they're very good at that. And we're also fortunate in King County that we have a lot of urban programs, Native programs, and we've got 2 tribes, but we also have a 3rd tribe that's not actually, their headquarters in Lewis County and Clark County, and that's the Collett's tribe. But they have a behavioral health program in King County, which is very helpful. So we also, one thing I want to mention as a resource for LICWAC and for all caregivers and Indian kids in our child welfare system, we do have an ongoing group that meets monthly. It's called the Foster Parent Support Group. And this group has, it not only provides activities for the children, because some of our kids are not placed in Native homes. So in fact, most of them are not. And it's very important that these children have those connections to the community. And so group allows for virtual activities. It also provides training and sort of classes for the foster parents and caregivers. And then at each one, pre-COVID, we would have a meal there, and they'd meet with at the Cowlitz facility, and then we started a second one, or I should say, United Indians started a second one, and that is Casey sponsors that. And once you know, we're allowed to, when the requirements of COVID, you know, are lifted, we hope to meet in person again and restore that those meetings in person. So like I said, we're very fortunate to have these resources available to us in King County. Next slide, please. Oh, of course, one last thing, the role, advocate for the best interests of Indian children. When should CAVES be staffed? We staff CFWS cases not involved. When the tribe has requested LICWAC to staff the case, cases should be staffed within 60 days of original placement or scheduled within 60 days if a staffing cannot be arranged. Every 6 months thereafter, unless required to be staffed sooner by LICWAC, and then monthly reviews when a child is in a non-Indian placement or at a time frame designated by LICWAC. Membership, the impasse, this is important. The impasse process, this is when it's a deadlock, when there's a deadlock between DCYF and LICWAC following a staffing where LICWAC does not concur with the department's plan and the case will not agree with the recommendations of LICWAC. Membership. Members must be, well, if they're designated by tribe or urban organization, have come with a resolution or a letter from that agency. And in lieu of that, they can be responsible community members. We expect that of everyone who have a genuine interest. In King County, we have 2 tribes, and I have one member from Snoqualmie, and I have nobody representing Muckleshoot. So I rely on United Indians. I rely on other organizations. We have our, it's called the Institute. What is it called? It's called Erie Institute. Anyway, it's a program with the University of Washington, and I have several people that participate on my LICWAC. And then I have members who are community, we call them at-large members. And then we have, once in a while, I have from the health board, but I have to rely on other community organizations to be able to have a full staffing team. Next. They must not be a DCYF employee, must not be serving as a court-appointed special advocate, advocate or guardian ad litem, and must be registered volunteers with DCYF and complete a background clearance, and have no convictions related to defeat or offenses against children. Who may request a LICWAC? The child's tribe, off-reservation Indian organization, other members of LICWAC, the liaison, the caseworker, of course, supervisor, parent, child, relative, foster parent, and any others involved with a child could request a staffing, like a CASA or a child advocate. The LICWAC attendance is determined by LICWAC, or I'm saying the people who come aside from the members themselves. So that would be the assigned social workers must be in attendance as a primary presenter. The caseworker supervisor, parents, guardians, or the Indian custodian. The child can attend if there's 12 years or older. Foster parents, relatives, support persons upon agreement by the caseworker and LICWAC. Tribal representatives, attorneys upon agreement by caseworker and LICWAC. And the guardian ad litem, CASA, or child advocates, and other persons necessary for additional information. Might be like a provider. Next slide. Conflict of interest. Any LICWAC member who is expressly familiar, related to, or involved in another capacity with the parties being reviewed must state the role relationship prior to the review. Such a member may give input, but must leave the room while LICWAC deliberates. This includes a member who works with the individual from the tribe agency they represent, or is in an advocacy role with one or more of the individual of the family. Yeah, and then the protocol, they must bring, the caseworker must bring the most current court report, the family ancestry chart, a shared planning form should be launched in FamLink, because the way I'm doing it now is that I open up the case, and then I basically fill out the recommendations as we staff the case. And so they have to launch the form in the FamLink. And then bring in any previous recommendations from LICWAC, and then the case file. Now, due to COVID or the pandemic, we are not meeting in person at this time. We're meeting by Zoom. And so we've had to make adjustments on the information. We don't share ahead of time. Usually the LICWAC members would come in a little earlier and go over the information and review it, so they have an idea of what the case was about. But we can't do that right now. And as soon as those restrictions are lifted, then we will resume to our in-person meeting and back to our protocols. Yeah. And so the resources are on, this is the Indian Child Welfare Policy and Procedure Manual. And then also resources, Governor's Office of Indian Affairs, the U.S. Department of Interior, and Heidi gave you that link. Well, here's the link, but we have that available for our workers. And then this bottom link is Office of Tribal Relations. And thank you. If you have any questions, please, let me know, or I can go in the chat box, I guess.
Roxanne, I do have a comment from somebody that said that her name was Joy. She said, I had the opportunity to meet with Roxanne and LICWAC a few years ago regarding my foster child. Mm-hmm. Roxanne and team were great to work with and very helpful. Thanks for all you do, Roxanne.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
You never know.
I know. I understand that. And I'm just really grateful that you're here. So there was a couple questions, and let me go back to them. And let's see. Oh, can a foster parent from other counties attend the foster parent support group in King County that you mentioned?
Yeah, I don't see a problem. You just, I can, the only way I need to know is how to get you that information, because I send that out. They send flyers every month now, and they're all web right now. They're all virtual because of COVID. So yeah, that makes it difficult, because they do provide a nice meal. It allows for foster parents to get to know each other, having something in common that they're, and it's not just foster parents, it's caregivers, kinship caregivers. It can be even adoptive caregivers who've adopted a child. It's welcome to everybody. And the cultural piece it varies. They try to they'll have different tribal cultural activities. So
okay.
In fact,
if you'd like to,
oh, go ahead.
You can send that to me, and I will make sure the people on the training today will get that.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we are open for questions. You can put them in the chat for either Heidi and or Roxanne. Roxanne, thank you so much. This is the first I've seen your presentation on LICWAC, and it's just full of some really wonderful information that is needed to be shared. So I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. And I just want to say that this dates me, but I participated. I wasn't the original member of LICWAC, but I participated in 1976. And then I did that for a year. And back then, as they were starting, it was a great team. And now, of course, I facilitate, and I've been facilitating it for about 15 years. So it's a good resource, and it was, even before, in the early days, it was very, very crucial, because the tribes weren't as structured as they are today. They didn't have the resources. Today they have resources. They have their casinos that have helped them build their economies, and they can do more for their members. But in those early days, they couldn't, and even some tribes struggle too. Like they don't have resources like the state, so those can be real challenges for tribes. And I've staffed cases out of state, especially where the tribe just didn't have the ability to be involved on a regular basis. So, but when that occurs and we're going to a permanency, that might be adoption, the social worker would have to get in touch with the tribe right away to let them know, and then we would have them come. They don't always participate, but they're welcome to be there. But especially when it comes to that permanency plan, that they need to be there for that one to make sure that they're in agreement with it. So,
right.
Yeah.
Would you share with us who exactly needs to be invited to the LICWAC meetings?
Well, we invite the family if available. Maybe not the first time, but my team wants to see the family. They want to hear from the family. They want to meet the family, and they want to make sure that the family understands what's going on. You know, they invite them. They may not come all the time, but they are expected to be invited at least, once or twice. And then some family members, a foster parent, depending, but we prefer the parents first before foster family. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a second.
Okay. Got a call.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to answer it. I was going to turn it off.
All right.
So this is Heidi. I know Ryan's going to share, and he may have already, the attachment for the breakdown of the LICWAC liaisons for each region. I wanted you guys to have that information so you could contact them directly to make sure if you feel like you're being left off an invite for these meetings.
Great, Heidi. There is a question here as well from Greg, and it says, can you explain what would be needed for a beyond reasonable doubt determination for termination? Would pending and no response from NAIR responses needed to be resolved? Oh, that was a mouthful, sorry. I think what he's asking is that if there is still NAIR or anything outstanding, would termination still continue? Is my best educated guess on this question.
If they're moving towards termination, I believe they're going to have to send out that legal notice, the ICWA legal notice for termination to each of those tribes.
Yes, that's correct.
5 points for me. Woo!
Way to go, Heidi. That's funny. Okay, any other questions? Please do not hesitate to reach out to your supervisors. I know Heidi was gracious enough to give her information. Reach out to the liaisons from your regions. They are a wealth of information. And being a LICWAC member, not as long as Roxanne, but since the early 90s, but it is vital to continue to work towards culturally appropriateness for our children. And when it's actually the tribe's children, so they're not my children, they're the tribe's children. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything that Roxanne, you would just like to end with, and or Heidi? I really appreciate you both.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just think that it's important to know when you mentioned that these are the tribe's children, it's actually they're citizens of that
Thank you.
tribe. And so, and as the whole point of the law was to protect their best interest, because without the children, they won't have a tribe. So that's the takeaway.
Thank you.
So
I just want to say thanks again for having me, and thank you guys for all the work that you're doing to help us partnership and really wrap our arms around these children and make sure that they are connected with their tribes and they're getting the best services and all the resources that they're entitled to. And so
Great.
sorry if the PowerPoint was a little fan link heavy. I know I had a few slides in there I should have just not shared, but thanks for your patience with me and sitting through the whole thing.
Well, Heidi, I think they may need to know and see what the social workers have to do to keep, the notices going, all the paperwork that they need to do, because social workers are vital in this teamwork that we have with them.
True.
So yes. Well, everyone, we still have a half hour, but if there's no other questions, I just get a lot of thank yous to Heidi and Roxanne, and everybody is appreciative to have your expertise and your knowledge here today. And we will share your information with the masses. And if there's other questions that come up in the future, I will reach out to you both. And I'm very grateful that we had this time together, because I believe that both of NAIR and LICWAC are very important aspects of what the advocates need to do to continue to ask those questions, to move forward the cultural piece for our Indian children and our families. I do have one thing that came to mind, though. I'd like to throw this out to you, Heidi and Roxanne. I was listening to a review one day, and we had a mother who was she was a member of the Yakima Nation, but the child was not eligible at that time. Nobody talked about how we need to continue to move forward in keeping that child involved within the tribe. Can you shed some light on that for us, please?
well, we would still recommend that the child partake. I mean, depending on where you are, Yakima is central part of the state, South Central, and, trying to get that, when opportunity came up, they should try to go to activities there. If not there, then here. But, one thing we recommend is a lot of the tribes have websites, and you can look up and see what kind of cultural resources are available. I know Yakima has a day called Treaty Day, and that's in honoring of their treaty. And I'm assuming there's all kinds of things that go along with that. But they have other activities. I'm trying to think. So if you can't get over there, and because they have a wonderful museum, and I mean, I haven't been there in quite a while, but they have resources, and I always recommend looking up at the tribe and looking up at what kind of resources. Sometimes they have publications, they have cultural things, and it changes too. So it just depends on the tribe. I remember looking up, I don't know if they're now, because again, the websites change, but you could look up like Tulalip, and they'd have a Salish Lushootseed word, and they'd teach you how to pronounce it and what it meant. And every week or every day, I think it was about every week the word changed, but there was always something different. So, I would recommend the websites. Look up the websites and start there, and contact the tribe. And if it's a social worker, there's nothing wrong with them to call up and say, do you have any resources I can give this child? So they have something about their tribe, even as a descendant.
Great.
So
Thank you
that's
so
my
much.
recommendation.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, Laura Lee, for inviting me. I appreciate this, and I'm glad I was able to do it. And I'm really sorry about all the technical problems. But next time, maybe it'll be in person.
Yes, that is the prayer. And I will, there's nothing else in the chat box. And again, I just say, in Kuspu'us, we are all one heart, and we are all on this journey together for our Indian children and our families. So please continue this journey, and with an open heart and open ears and continued learning. So thank you. Thank you both so very much.
Well, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
You're welcome.